Here we have the PT-1 pedals by ProtoSimTech. They certainly look nice, but what are they like to use? Find out in this Game & Muscle review. Now, to avoid giving you all an aneurysm by going too in depth into the fascinating world of simulator pedals, you can essentially break sim pedals into 3 categories. Category 1, these pedals come with a wheel and they'll make do. Category 2, dear God, I'm starting to spend too much money on my racing simulator. And Category 3, gone too far. The PT-1 pedals fall between Category 2 and 3. Just balancing there like a tightrope walker on a windy day. That's because somehow, though they have the features of a Category 3 pedals, they almost come in at the price of Category 2 pedals, retailing at $439, though you will have to add postage and shipping costs to that, especially if you live outside of the United States of America. Now let's take a look and read the features off the back of the box. In a stroke of genius, ProtoSimTech shipped the PT-1 pedals in an inconspicuous brown box. This cleverly disguises your purchase from your partner as something that might be useful for the house. A small cupboard, a place to put your shoes, that drying rack you were meant to buy last week but you didn't and now you're in trouble. Upon opening the box, we find the pedals are well packaged with not only half a ton of packaging peanuts but a couple of miles of bubble wrap. After being assaulted by the bubble wrap, we find 3 pedals, a pedal plate, additional brake dampeners, as well as all the tools, screws and bolts to stick things to your rig. That is of course because ProtoSimTech, in an act of madness, sent us everything they make. If you do just buy the pedals on their own, you'll get the tools, the different dampeners, but you won't receive all the other bits and bobs as they're purchasable separate on their website. Looking at the pedals individually and in more detail, you have a potentiometer based accelerator with a spring base resistance, a crazy load cell brake that uses a triple dampener system, and a Frankenstein potentiometer clutch that uses multiple springs combined with a rolling digressive clutch mechanism. The pedals as well as the pedal faces are all machined from solid blocks of aluminium and then sandblasted to give them a nice uniform finish. The pedal plate allows you to stick the pedals to any rig that has Fanatec holes and also gives you a bit of an adjustable footrest. All in all, it took us around 2 hours to get everything together, have a bit of a fiddle, drink a few cups of tea and then stick them to the SimRacing K2 cockpit. Nicely, the pedals are pre-configured out of the box and once they're on the rig, they're pretty much plug and play. Critique. So far we've only had around 10 hours or so of driving with these pedals, and of those 10, maybe only 3 where Mr. Muscle's slow brain built up enough muscle memory to really appreciate them. With that in mind, it's worth remembering that with any input device, be it a gamepad, a wheel or pedals, it always takes a good bit of time before things click, regardless of their quality. Because I've yet to put the hours into these pedals to be hypercritical about their action and durability, what I want to do is focus on the objective qualities and aspects apparent to me at this point in time. The first aspect that really stands out is the adjustability of these pedals, and not just that they're adjustable, but the way they've been specifically designed to make the adjustments user-friendly, quick and relatively simple. Want a softer brake? Swap a dampener out. Want the accelerator a bit looser or stiffer? Twiddle 2 knobs. Want to raise or lower the pedal faces? Unscrew a screw, slide it and then tighten it back up. That's not to say some things won't require a bit more time and fiddling. For example, if you want to drastically change the pedal angle and throw, you will need to unscrew a few bolts as well as put the potentiometer arm into another hole. But even then, that's still pretty straightforward and not particularly complicated or fiddly to do. In general though, you can easily see and appreciate the thought that's gone into this aspect of the pedal's design. And where the adjustability is really important, somewhat taking us back to the point I was making about it taking time to get used to different input devices, is that say you genuinely use these to train for go-karting or any real-world car, the value as a training tool is only magnified when you can get your sim pedals feeling like your real specific car pedals. The more you reduce the difference between the real car and the simulated car, the less time it will take to adapt between the two. And with the depth of the amount of adjustment that's possible with the PT-1 pedals, I think it'll accommodate a lot of people in this regard. But for those of us too poor to do real racing sim fans, it simply means we can fiddle with our knobs more, as well as getting things dialed in just how we like it. Taking a look at each pedal individually, we begin with the accelerator pedal. Now the accelerator spring is quite hefty, which at first can seem a bit much, especially compared to my previous Fanatec Club Sport V2 pedals. But after putting in the hours and getting used to the stiffer spring, it really helps to control and modulate the throttle, especially at that last 10% or so of input, which is where you often find the point at which simulated cars start to step out or require very subtle gas application on corner exit as to not get too much slip angle. Because of the heavier spring, the pedal return is also much more snappy and immediate, which makes the cars in the simulators also feel a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit more responsive. On the downside though, if you do completely take your foot off the gas, the mechanism will return with a bit of a bang. Mind you, if you drive as gentle as a ballerina with a broken ankle, it's pretty much silent. Moving on to the most important pedal, the brake in my opinion is absolutely fantastic. Not only again with it being customizable in feel, but the amount of depth and control over its modulation is simply unparalleled to any other pedals I've used. By making use of 3 dampeners, the PT-1 brake allows you to stamp on the brake with confidence, come off the brake gradually whilst modulating it, and then lean on the brake subtly to manipulate the car, all without requiring you to be some kind of insane alien sim racer. Now it's worth saying, the brake to me does not feel particularly fluid, such as what I believe you might get from one of the really top-end hydraulic based systems, and the feel when braking is certainly that of the polyurethane dampeners as well as the initial spring dampener. That said, the brake does feel really satisfying, and just the right amount of mush to get the immediate braking response in say a simulated Formula car, but then having the give for when you want to come off the brake gradually, or those times when you want to stamp but not hit maximum braking force and just hit very specific amounts of moderate braking force precisely. After learning the feel of the brake as well, it certainly seems much easier to replicate various types of brake force than previous pedals that I've used. Also in my opinion, though the initial spring-based resistance is a bit light, what it does do is give you the perfect 5% or so lead-in of brake pressure, which is typically just enough to scrub off a bit of speed mid-corner when you make an error, or if you simply want to dip the nose of the car down without losing too much time. You can of course dial this out, but I've found the initial haptic feel of that light spring is incredibly useful. Finally, the all-round sensitivity of the brake is incredible, so much so that you might even want to put a small software dead zone on it. The load cell literally picks up just your foot slightly resting on the brake. No doubt this is a combination of the high-grade load cell combined with Leo Bodner's BU0836-LC Resistance is Futile, We Are the Borg circuit board. I have tried, but because it's so much about feel, it's really hard to convey in a video how good this brake really is. All I can say is think about that feeling after a cup of tea, or maybe that time Amy Smith rubbed your leg on the school bus. That pretty much captures the experience of using this brake. Onto the clutch we go. Changing gear is pretty satisfying in a real car. Unfortunately, with simulated cars, knowing whether the clutch is down enough to change gear often requires Sherlock Holmes detective skills. Fortunately, simulator pedals more recently have started to address this with what's known as a digressive clutch. Essentially, the clutch is non-linear in its resistance to your pressure, with you having to push it over a hump of force, letting you know that it's then indeed safe to shift. The PT-1 digressive clutch mechanism is again one of the best I've had the chance to use. By using 2 side springs and a rail mechanism with a hump that everything has to ride over, you not only get a really definitive feel for the clutch, much more so than the digressive clutch on my previous Club Sport V2 pedals, but the system allows again for easy adjustment and placement of the hump, allowing you to match the bite point precisely to your taste. Out of the box, the clutch is quite heavy in the amount of pressure it takes to operate, and if your main thing is driving old cars, you might want to look at lightening up the springs a little bit. That said, I've been using it in its default configuration, and the satisfaction and knowledge from knowing when it's safe to shift is absolutely glorious. Also, due to the heavy weight, it's quite safe to rest your foot on the clutch without the risk of the game picking up input. Generally, you're not meant to rest your foot on the clutch, in fact you'll probably fail your driving test if you do so. I'd have also thought in a real race car the jostling and bumps would make it quite likely you'd accidentally push down on the clutch when you didn't want to. But for those of us in the calm, placid seas of sim racing land, and those of us that are especially lazy such as myself, having the clutch there to rest your foot on is certainly a nice little feature. In conclusion, it's probably apparent that I really like these pedals, and I'd really struggle to go back to my Club Sport V2s having used these now. It is worth saying, however, that if you do live in the United Kingdom, the postage cost and the potential of import duty taxes can increase the cost of them, moving them from the "this is an incredible price" to "this is now a reasonable price for these type of pedals." Those of you in America though, the price of these pedals is absolutely extraordinary. Outside of that, I think a concern for people that maybe live in papier-mâché houses, such as what many of us live in the United Kingdom, is that the pedals can be a little bit noisy. Now I have found you can dial out a lot of that noise by setting the springs up lighter and fiddling with the clutch a bit, and then also driving a lot lighter, which might make you faster in some ways, but really you're probably going to want the pedals set up in a somewhat stiff fashion to get the most out of them, and so the noise is just going to be inevitable. As I said earlier in the video, ProtoSimTech sent us these pedals, the pedal plate and the additional pedal faces for free to review. Personally, if I was going to be buying these pedals, what I would do is I wouldn't bother buying the pedal underneath pedal plate. I would just get the pedals and bolt them to a plank of wood and save the money there. Also, the curved pedal faces they sell are perfectly fine and nice, but I found only really using one on the throttle and keeping the default brake and clutch pedal as they are. The aluminium pedal faces that come with the default pedals are really nice, and it just seems a bit of a shame to me to swap them over with something a bit plasticky. Finally, Gamer Muscle videos are of course not the only people to have reviewed these pedals. There are some really good reviews out there, so what I've done is in the video description I've put a link to those reviews, so if you're looking at getting these pedals you can check them out and see what other people have said about them. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well as Twitch. Of course, when we are on Twitch we're normally playing driving simulators and we will be using these pedals, so if you catch us live you can just ask us a question and you'll probably be answered on the spot. I hope you found this video informative, useful and entertaining. Until the next one, goodbye.